Good evening, everyone. My name is Cheryl Schultz, and I am a volunteer and a director of the Minnesota chapter for F3E. So I am not out on the East Coast right now. I am in beautiful Minnesota. F3E is the Foundation for Financial Education. We're a 501c3 nonprofit, and we go out into communities to educate people such as yourself on financial issues. It gives me the opportunity to volunteer my time in a workshop type setting like this. Now, we're in unprecedented times. Normally, we would be doing these live. All of our volunteers actually come out to our headquarters, which are in Rockville, Maryland, where we started in 2009. We have since expanded into 15 states, but we are out there probably every 4 weeks doing presentations just like the one that we are going to do tonight. Most of the workshops and presentations that we do when we are in the DC area are for different government agencies. So the government has approved all of our presentations. You are going to be seeing tonight the financial fitness presentation, which would be the exact same one that I would be doing if I was out in DC doing this for the ATF or at the Pentagon or any other agencies or organizations that we present at. Our foundation is really comprised of attorneys, estate planners, advisors, CPAs, a lot of different financial professionals. And what this really allows us to do is to combine the knowledge of all these professionals so we can provide education in what I like to call, sometimes it's an overused word, but in really a more holistic way. So rather than doing a presentation that just focuses on taxes or just focuses on estate planning, which would be siloed education, if you will, if we can use that term today. We're going to bring everything into financial fitness. We're going to bring taxes in. We're going to bring estate planning in. We're going to bring a lot of different things in, so we are not just focusing on one aspect of your financial world. For the most part, we believe that the financial industry does a good job on selling financial products, but where we feel that there's a downfall, and that is in the teaching and educating people on how to plan. So our goal is to share as much information and knowledge that we can. Of course, you have a copy of the presentation on your screen. I believe all of you have been sent a copy of the presentation as well. This, of course, is for you to keep. If you've printed it out, please feel free to take notes. And we'll just go from there. You're also going to be given at the end of this presentation, and it takes like 30 seconds. And for lack of better words, it's really a feedback, a survey, an evaluation form. And I would encourage you to complete that for a couple different reasons. Number one, these will come back to us, so it helps us at the foundation to make sure that what we are presenting is what people want. Was the material good material? Was the information we provide, did it make sense? Did it give you some deeper education on the subject? It also allows us, or it will allow you, excuse me, to put other topics that you may want to have presented. So what we do is we provide this information back to Lauren, and she is going to take a look at this information, and if there are certain topics that you would like more information on, we will do that as well. Another thing that you will find on this evaluation form is we provide complimentary, no obligation meetings and consultations to anyone that attends our workshop. So if you hear something today that really strikes a button and you want more information and how it can pertain to you in your situation, please check that. And we will have someone from the foundation reach out to you, the experts in that area, and get together with you. More than likely over the next few weeks, it's going to be via teleconferences and things like that. But we will get together with you and look at your particular situation. So we are going to get started on financial fitness. And financial fitness really is an all-encompassing way to look at how you can put yourself in the best possible situation to succeed financially. Now, do understand, I could talk an hour on each one of the things that we're going to go through in this presentation. And the good news with that is you're going to get a very high-level overview of all the things that come into play when you are putting your financial plan together. It will be an overview. As I mentioned earlier, no one size fits all. So we're going to be talking in generalities. And if there's anything, like I said, that strikes your fancy and you would like to know how it pertains to you, let us know. Again, we will provide information to Lauren on any of these subjects that we could do again in a group setting. So we start with your financial journey. And our financial journey is really, it encompasses 3 phases of wealth. It's the accumulation phase, the distribution phase, and the conservation phase. And all of us right now that are working in our careers, we are in the accumulation phase. And this is an interesting phase because this is where you start bringing different financial people into your world and start getting information from them, accumulating and managing your money. And there's basically 3 different areas. We've got areas of the bank, we've got money managers or brokerage houses, and we have insurance companies. So these people and these organizations, as I said, they are all focused on the accumulation of money. And how can they help you save money? How can they help you earn a higher rate of return on that money? Unfortunately, this is where it stops. And they put their blinders on for everything else that is a part of that planning. They want you to get to the top of that mountain as quickly as you can. They want to get you there faster than any other advisor, any other bank, any other insurance person can get you there so they can be the biggest and the best. While you're in this stage of saving money, there is probably one of the most important concepts is to understand in this stage is the time value of money. Many of you have probably heard this phrase. It was from Albert Einstein, and he said that one of the most powerful forces in the universe is compounding interest, and it's very important to save over time. However, it is not so much that you're getting the highest return possible, but rather that you're consistently getting a return. Maybe it's a little bit lower, but it's consistent. Once we reach the top of this mountain, we are now, of course, in the distribution stage. We're going to go through each one of these stages more in depth, but I just want to give a quick overview on what they are right now. That distribution phase is basically when your job and your income stops. It's now time for you to take everything, the blood, sweat, and tears, the saving, the managing of what you have accumulated, if you will, in that accumulation stage, and now start distributing it back to you, because that now is going to be your income over the next 20, 30, possibly 40 years while you are in retirement. The last stage is conservation, and this is basically estate planning, if you will. It's what and how you're going to pass on your estate to your heirs. And while we, at first glance, it's like our financial journey, it begins in accumulation. What we want to talk about is how what you are or are not doing today and how it may or may not affect the distribution and the conservation stage. So we are going to start with, we have this labeled Generation Challenges, but it's really, you got to look at where you are, and you're going to be a different generation as you go forward. So each one of these stages, the accumulation, distribution, and conservation, they all have different eroding factors. Excuse me, I take that back. They all have a lot of the same of the eroding factors. We call these risks. We call these the things, the variables in our life that we cannot control, and they affect us differently based on what phase that we are in. For instance, if we can look at, for a minute, volatility of the market. So volatility in the market is a simple or is a fancy, smancy word of just saying the market's going up and down, and we don't have any control over it. We all would like to think we've hired, if you will, the best planner, the best advisors out there that have some secret sauce, that know what the market's going to do. They know when to get us out of it, when to keep us in it, and when to add more money to it. None of us have a crystal ball. We can sit and we can listen to all the professionals in the world. We can listen to the guys, if you will, that predicted 2008, and we can say they're going to do that again. None of us have control over anything when it comes to the volatility in the market. And I think the unprecedented times we're in right now is a prime example of that. This COVID-19, while none of us could ever predicted this was going to happen, number one, the other thing we can't predict is what is this going to do? What is this going to do for us financially? What is it going to do for us all the way around? So these are the variables we have in the accumulation stage, the volatility. If you look at volatility while you're in the distribution stage, I'm going to back up 1 second. In the accumulation stage, so when you're putting money and accumulate it, volatility can be a really good thing because you're doing a lot of dollar cost averaging. What that means is I'm saving $1,000 a month, and today the market is up, so I'm not buying as many shares as I could because the market's very high. With volatility, when the market drops down, these shares are now cheaper. They're less expensive, so I'm buying more shares. So I'm really doing a lot of dollar cost averaging. So volatility, while we're accumulating, can be a very good thing because you can think of it as when the market's down, things are cheaper, and we're buying things on sale, and it means we can buy more of them. So now we look at volatility in the distribution stage. This takes on a whole different risk level, if you will. So the best way to explain this is if you are in the distribution stage and you are now pulling money from everything that you've accumulated over the last 30, 40 years of working. Okay, so volatility in the market now becomes a little more important. What I mean by that is if I'm pulling money, and I'm just going to use my bucket of money, my bucket of retirement money, and we'll talk about what those different buckets are in a little bit, but my bucket of retirement money, if I'm pulling money from that and the market is dropping, I am now have two holes in my bucket, if you will. I have the money that I'm pulling out to live on, my income, and I now have money basically just disappearing because of the volatility or the decreases and the swings in the market. Volatility in the conservation stage, again, is basically the same as it is in distribution. It's now, are you conserving your money in a way that you are able to pass along to your heirs as much as you possibly can or as much as you possibly want? Taxes. We're going to talk about the unknown taxes. We will talk more in depth about this as well. But taxes are one of these unknowns in each one of the stages. So if we look at, if you're in the accumulation stage right now, you know what taxes are. Most of us are getting our taxes done right now. We know what bracket we fall into. We know what we're paying in taxes. Move that to the distribution phase. For some of you, that may be 10 years from now. Some of you, that may be 40 years from now. We do not know what taxes are going to be 10 years from now, 40 years from now. So now we've got this big unknown in the distribution phase. In the accumulation stage, taxes are not unknown because we are living in the moment of what they are. The same goes true for the conservation stage. So we'll talk more about this as well, but if we don't know what taxes are going to be when I'm leaving my estate to my heirs, who is going to get taxed? Is it better for me to be taxed on it now? Or is it better for my heirs to be taxed on it down the road? And based on what the asset is, based on who the individuals are, you are going to be taxed differently. We'll talk more about that as well. Inflation, I think inflation is basically an unknown risk. It's a variable in every stage. Of course, when we're in the accumulation stage, it doesn't allow us to buy as much as we would normally be able to buy. We have to spend more money on things that we are purchasing. While we're in the accumulation stage, many people are also in the purchasing stage. It may be homes. It may be vacations. Obviously, it's just living expenses as well. So it may have an effect on how much we're able to save and how much we're able to accumulate. You look at the distribution phase, the same thing goes there. We don't know what the cost of living is going to be in that 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the road when we are in retirement. Same with conservation. We don't know, again, how inflation is going to affect that. Probably one of the biggest things and the unknown factors is, I think, it doesn't matter how young you are, you see these numbers all the time in these statistics that one of the biggest unknown costs we are all going to have when we are in that retirement or distribution phase, and also in conservation, is the cost of health care. Number one, we don't know what it's going to cost, so that's where the inflation piece comes in. The other piece is we don't know how healthy or unhealthy we are going to be. Interest rates, that is going to be another piece in our accumulation stage. Think of interest rates as you are either making interest, so you're making money, or you're borrowing interest to buy things. Again, it's a variable. It is just different in each stage. In the accumulation stage, more than likely you're making a lot of purchases, so interest rates are critical. We've all seen the mortgage rates right now. The 10-year T-bills, they are at the lowest, they're historical lows. And so purchasing things at a low interest rate when you're in the accumulation stage is critical and very, very advantageous. When we're in that distribution stage, now we can look at, we're not so much buying and purchasing things anymore, but now our interest rate becomes even more important. And when I say interest rate, I'm talking all-inclusive, your return on your accounts, everything. So that rate of return becomes more important in our distribution because it's basically what's helping us either maintain or grow the assets that we have saved in the accumulation stage. Unexpected emergencies, we talked a little bit about that. Probably health is the biggest one. When you're in the accumulation stage, most of us are working. Most of us have our health benefits through our employer, or we are purchasing them somewhere else. Again, we can't predict what is going to happen to us medically or what will happen to our health, but we have a sure set plan that is taking care of us. When we go into distribution, retirement, then the whole ball of wax changes. Again, the biggest piece is the unknown of what those costs are going to be. More importantly, the unknown of, are we going to be healthy or not healthy? Unfortunately, I've never known anyone that as they get older, they get healthier. Very rarely does that happen. So these are things that we need to be thinking about. I'm going to move on to, and this screen that we're looking at right here this is going to change. This is basically the typical retiree right now. And of course, whatever job you left, whatever job you retired from is going to make a difference. But a lot of people that are in retirement right now are receiving pensions. For you as an individual, do you have a pension when you retire? More than likely, if you're some sort of a government or public employee, you will have a pension. More than likely, if you work in the private sector, you are not going to have a pension. Social Security. Social Security, if you look at this right now, about 33% of the income that a retiree makes is coming from Social Security. Social Security is going to look different in the future. We don't know what it's going to look like. In all reality and all truthfulness, at the foundation, we don't believe Social Security is going away. We believe it's going to be there. It's just going to look different. But as you get further towards that distribution stage, Social Security planning becomes critical. Let me see, earnings. A lot of people still work. A lot of people went into retirement thinking, when I retire, I'm going to retire. There were the unknowns that popped up, the risks, these variables they did not plan for. Maybe they got sick. Maybe a spouse got sick. They weren't prepared for inflation. They never paid attention to any of the fees that they are paying on where their funds and where their money is being managed. Again, the tax piece. You're going to hear me say taxes a lot. I actually own a tax preparation office in Minnesota, so taxes are one of my pet peeves. But what I do like about taxes is even though we don't know what they're going to be in the future, we have a big piece of where we can control how much of our money is actually being taxed. So look at this pie chart, if you will, and where will you be? No, 4 years from now, you don't know where you're going to be. But if you are not going to have a pension, how will you make up for that 21% of the income that someone right now may be receiving from a pension? If you're not going to work in retirement, where will that extra 32% come from? So the earlier, the sooner we can start taking control or at least mitigating the things we cannot control and preparing for them, the better this pie chart will look for all of us down the road. So here is an interesting one, and it's a tax strategy, and we're going to talk a little bit about this. I'm going to attempt to pull up a PowerPoint to give you an example before we leave this, but we are in the lowest tax environment we've been in over 30 years. Most of you on this call have moved to a lower tax bracket. So a lot of tax strategies you can take advantage of right now. So the one that we all think about more than likely is our 401k, our TSP, our IRAs. So I'm just going to chalk this all up as our retirement funds. So we've been told, and many of you have been told, that our entire life, let's defer our taxes. If I can defer the taxes I have to pay today, I don't have to pay taxes on them today, and I'll pay those taxes down the road when I start using this retirement money. So this is something to think about and ponder on. If you move down in tax brackets from where you were in 2017, and most of you on this phone call have, some people went from a 25% tax bracket to a 22% tax bracket. Many people went from a 15% tax bracket to a 12% tax bracket. So does it make sense for me not to pay 12% in taxes now, only to have to pay 15% or more in the future? Does that make sense? Does it make more sense to pay a low tax now so I never, ever have to pay taxes on that money again? Many of you will know what I'm talking about, and that can be a Roth. We've got, there are many 401ks. I know all TSPs have a Roth portion, so any contributions you are putting into your 401k, into your TSP, you can label those contributions as being Roth. So what that means is you are going to pay taxes on that today, but never again will you pay taxes. You will not pay taxes on the growth, nor will you pay taxes on the income when you pull that money out. Social Security is something we'll talk a little bit more because that's one of those buckets you're going to have down the road. We're all paying into Social Security right now. As of right now, Social Security is not 100% taxed, so we should start thinking about security planning. at least as we get further into the accumulation stage. So what I want to show you, and I'm going to try and switch over here on my screen, so let's see what I can do. I want to talk about, many times we run into people and they will just say, they'll come up with the argument of lost opportunity costs. So just let me back up a little bit. What that means is, if I have $10,000 to put into a tax-deferred account, I don't have to pay taxes on it now, so I have $10,000 that I can invest. And their argument is, if I have to pay taxes on it now, I have less money to invest, so I'm way better off putting more money into invest. So let's take a look at that for a minute. Let's say you do have $10,000 that you can put in your 401k, your IRA, your TSP. I don't care where we're putting it, but you're putting it in tax deferred. So 100% of this money gets to go to work for you. And we're going to use a generalization that over time, this money doubles. So your money has doubled to $20,000. You are now in retirement or not in retirement, but you need money. It may be for income, it may be for unpredicted health expense, it may be to buy a new car, whatever it is, you need money. So you pull out your $20,000. It's 100% taxable, so we're going to just put you in the 25% tax bracket. So you're going to pay $5,000 in taxes. So you are going to walk away with $15,000 to spend. Now we're going to back up and we're going to go back to our $10,000 and we're going to put it into a Roth IRA. So that means I have to pay taxes today on it. So we'll use our 25% tax bracket example again. So I have to pay $2,500 in taxes, so I only have $7,500 to invest. If my money doubles over time, I have $15,000. So anyone that talks to you about opportunity costs, pay taxes down the road rather than today because you will have more money to invest today, they do not fundamentally understand how taxes and finances work. The other thing, and we're just going to add, I guess, salt to the wound. This $20,000 that we have up here in the corner, that when you take it out, that goes directly on your tax return. That now means you may be putting yourself in a higher tax bracket and have to pay more taxes on your Social Security, have to pay more taxes on Medicare tax. So the strategy of deferring taxes for down the road, in 99% of the time, is not going to be to your advantage. I would say if this is a situation that you feel could be advantageous for you, just let us know. We'll get in contact with you and we'll walk through the specific taxes that you would or would not pay by going one way or the other. I want to talk a little bit about product versus strategy. And many times when we talk to someone and we talk about planning, and planning all starts with a goal, right? So we all have a goal. And the best thing I can tell you about a goal is a plan has got to be put into place. Any goal without a plan is just a mere wish. It's simply a wish of wanting something to happen. So let's take a look at that. If I want to have $1 million in my retirement account when I retire, I can't just wake up at age 55 and say, oh, why don't I have $1 million in my retirement account? I need to start planning for it now. The other is called needs-based planning, where you wake up one day and you've got a 17-year-old and an 18-year-old and you start thinking about college planning for them. That's called needs-based planning. Do we do a lot of needs-based planning? Absolutely. We do a lot of needs-based planning, but it is much more difficult, and it is not nearly as successful as if you start that planning stage as early on as possible. The other piece of putting together, let's use our $1 million example at age or when we want to retire. If my plan is just to have $1 million, that is not going to get you where you want to be. Because how am I saving that $1 million? Am I paying taxes on it now, so I don't have to pay taxes on it later? So my $1 million really is $1 million of spendable money? Or am I deferring all of it, so down the road, my $1 million after taxes is really only $750,000? So this is where we get into the product versus the strategy. Because all these things that you see on here, mutual funds, stocks, your mortgage, your 401ks, your IRAs, your Roth IRAs, they are basically just the product that you are using with your strategy. You see the words will on there. Many times we will talk to people about their estate planning. And they'll say, I'm all set because I have a will, so I'm good to go. A will is just a product of your estate plan. It's a strategy to get you where you want to go. Jumping back to mutual funds, we're putting a product into our strategy, but are we strategizing with that product? What I mean by that is, and I will use primarily mutual funds and stocks on here. We can use those as our examples. What are my fees? What are my fees on these mutual funds? How are they affecting my strategy? You'd be amazed at the number of people we run across that don't realize the amount of fees that they're paying on their funds and what this does to their accumulation. Taxes, again, we bring into taxes. Capital gains, we have to bring all these pieces into the actual product and then make sure we're strategizing that product the way we want it to, so we can meet our final goal. Retirement planning, and this is where, and I don't have a visual for this, but I think we can all visualize this in our minds, and that is we're going to have these different, I'm going to use buckets, okay? I'm from the Midwest, so we use a lot of buckets, right? So we're going to have all these different buckets of money when we retire. And these buckets are going to have different faucets and different spigots. For instance, my Roth IRA bucket is going to be a bucket, and the only spigot that is coming out, the only faucet that's coming out of that bucket is the one that's providing me income. Nothing else is coming out of there, unless you're using something that has some fees on it. So you may have fees on there, but let's do something to minimize those fees so it is not affecting the principle of my bucket. Now let's go to the exact opposite, and now we look at our 401ks, our 403bs, our TSPs, our IRAs. Now we have that bucket. So we talked a little bit earlier about what faucets are all in that bucket. We've got the income that we're taking out. We've got the volatility of the market, which can be a benefit to us, to our bucket, and increase it, or it can be very detrimental. Again, something we cannot control. We again may have fees, but this is something we can control. Are you putting your retirement funds in something where you are using everything to your advantage, such as low fees? We talked about the volatility, the taxes, and the I just lost it. The other spigot, the fees, excuse me. So we have these buckets. Over on the right, you're going to see Social Security. Social Security is going to be a separate bucket. Social Security, again, if we can just go on the belief that it's going to be there for us, it's more than likely it's going to look different than it looks today, but it is going to be there for us. And Social Security planning looks different for everyone. And what I mean by that is if you are single when you go into retirement, your Social Security planning is going to look different because you do not have to leave your Social Security benefits to anyone. Once you pass on, the Social Security benefits stop. So does it make sense for you to start taking Social Security earlier? Or does it make sense for you to hold off as long as you possibly can? For a single individual, that is going to look different, not only because you're single, but then you have to start looking at your individual situation. What other buckets do you have? How are those other buckets taxed? Married couples, again, this is not a one-size-fits-all. If there is a married couple where they're basically the same age, and their health is the same, their strategy is going to look much, much different than the couple sitting next to them where maybe there's a big age gap. Maybe there's a big age gap, or maybe there's a big health gap, meaning one is very, very healthy and one is very, very unhealthy. These strategies will change. But if we look at retirement planning, got to think about those buckets. And don't just start thinking, guys, now at that distribution phase. Think about what you can be doing now in the accumulation stage and how you can be filling those buckets. Which one do you want the fullest? Which one will you have the most control over? If we look at building a tax-free and or tax-advantaged retirement, that $1 million we have, more of that we're going to be able to put into our pocket at retirement and spend on whichever way we want to spend it. And if we don't want to spend it, we're going to be able to pass it on to our heirs. I've got another slide here I want to show you because one of the biggest asset that most people have when they get into their retirement is going to be their 401k, their IRAs, their TSPs, whatever they are. This is basically going to be the biggest asset that you have. Many people think that their home is going to be their biggest asset, but from what we've seen, statistics show our biggest asset when we retire is going to be our retirement funds. And right now I'm going to go on the fact that these retirement funds, so as we talked about, your retirement funds are 100% taxable to you. Anytime you take $1 out, you're paying tax on $1. Did you know your 401k right now, if that were to go to your heirs, such as, let's say you have 2 kids, it's also taxable to them, 100% taxable. So let's just say you have $1 million. Again, congratulations. You've done a great job in that blood, sweat, and tears phase of your life of saving money. You have $1 million in your 401k or your TSP right now. You have 2 kids. You love them both equally, so they are both each going to get a half of that account when you pass away. So they are going to get $500,000 apiece. And more than likely, you're feeling pretty good about that. But did you know that $500,000 that they are receiving is now 100% taxable to them? It's 100% taxable to them. There is not a child in the world that if they receive $500,000, it will not put them in the highest tax bracket that we have. Right now, the highest tax bracket we have is 37%. What will that highest tax bracket be when you retire? We don't know. But let's say right now it's that 37%, and that's just federal. We don't know what our state taxes are. They're going to be anywhere between 3 and 10%. So I'm just going to round this off to 40%. So your kids aren't getting $500,000. You've got a new beneficiary on your TSP and on your 401k, and it's called the United States government. They are going to get $400,000 of your $1 million, and each one of your kids is going to get $300,000. Was that the intent of the blood, sweat, and tears? That more of your money that you accumulated, that you worked hard for, that you diligently didn't go on that family vacation one year because you wanted to save it for retirement. Is that the intention, that someone other than your heirs would get more of that money than your heirs would? For most people, that is not their intent. I'm going to talk a little bit about wills. So many times people think about wills as being part of estate planning, which it is. It definitely can be a product that we use in estate planning, and wills are used in different ways. The number one thing we think about is it's our last will and testament. It's really basically saying how our assets are going to be divided up. When a will is executed, meaning when I die and my will is executed, it's got to go through what's a legal process that's called probate. It's expensive, and it's time-consuming. It's expensive. The money's coming directly out of your estate that you were trying to pass on, and your heirs may not see that money for a very long time. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The other two pieces of a will are your power of attorney and your medical directive. So this is, we always say, the biggest problem with a will is if you don't die. What I mean by that is power of attorney and medical directive. Power of attorney is your financial, durable power of attorney. This is someone who, if you become incapacitated, can make financial decisions for you. Your medical directive or your medical power of attorney is the same thing, only it's on the medical side. If you are incapacitated and cannot make your own health decisions, you assign someone to be that person that can make those decisions for you. I'm going to go back to the will and probate. Many times when we work with people, the biggest thing is they want their assets to be passed on as effectively and as efficiently as possible. And I'm here to tell you guys, in some cases that is with a will. It's with a will. In many cases, there are alternatives that can make it more effective and can make it more efficient. Such as, you're going to see some words on here as POD and TOD. So POD, payable on death, TOD is transfer on death. The difference between those two is the POD, payable on death, is going to be an investment account. Could be a brokerage account, but it's going to be checking and savings. TOD is going to be like a securities and brokerage account. And then we've got our TODD, transfer on death deed. That is where you would be transferring your house. So your house has a transfer on death deed on it that upon your passing, rather than that house going through your will to be distributed to your two kids or to whomever, it is just basically transferred. The deed of that house is transferred into their name. I want to back up 1 minute here. I don't want anyone here to confuse a POD or a TOD with joint ownership. What I mean by that is, and I'm just going to use, if I have a $100,000 CD, something a lot of us can relate to, and I don't want it to go through probate. I want it to go to my one son, Kelvin. I want that CD upon my passing to go directly to Kelvin. I don't want it to go through probate. It's probably going to cost $5,000 for that to go through probate. I want it to go directly to him. I've got two things I can do. I can do a POD, which means when I die, it goes to him. While I'm alive, that money is mine. If I put him on that CD as joint owner, he now, while I'm alive, is just as much owner of that $100,000 CD as I am. Now, none of us want, and I am not here to wish bad will on any of you and any of your families, but if my son runs into credit problems, they can come after that CD, my CD. If my son gets a divorce, it's very, very likely and probable that that $100,000 CD, at a minimum, half of it will be going to my ex-daughter-in-law. So do not confuse TODs, and joint ownership. Two completely different things. If you've got assets and you would like to find out, do I need a will? Can I avoid a will and do it the inexpensive way with just signing a couple more pieces of paper? Let us know. We work with individuals on this all the time. The other thing I want to point out on there is that word beneficiary. Beneficiary is king, okay? You, more than likely, you have, well, you do. You have beneficiary on life insurance. You have it on your your 401ks, your TSPs, your IRAs. You've got a beneficiary in there. Beneficiaries rule everything. It will always overrule a will. There is no judge in the country that will say the will oversees a beneficiary. So let me talk to you. If there's one thing you can walk away with today, I would ask all of you to go and check who the beneficiaries are on any type of assets where you have beneficiaries, because we forget about them. And I'll give you an example. I'm younger, I get a job, I'm not married, so I put my sister down as my beneficiary in my 401k. Life goes on, I get married, I have a couple of kids, I keep contributing to my 401k. It now becomes the largest asset I have, and I pass away. The one thing that I forgot to do is change that beneficiary. Now my will says all of my assets go to my husband and my 2 kids. But my beneficiary in my 401k says it goes to my sister. Upon my death, my 401k will go to my sister. My husband and my kids will not get a dime of that. Now, we can all sit here and say, I have a good sister. She loves my husband. She loves my kids. We can all hope and pray that that's what happens. But we have seen this go really bad. It's amazing when a little bit of money, or a lot of money, gets put on the table, what happens to people. Things change. So if there's one thing you can run out and do after this presentation is check your 401ks, your retirement accounts, anything that has a beneficiary on that, make sure that it is set up the way you want it to be set up. If you are part of a, if you're part of a family with kids from the husband, kids from the wife, and then you have joint kids, again, beneficiaries become very, very critical. If you need help sifting through all of this, please let us know and we can help you with that. The biggest error people make, and that is no estate plan, is not putting together a estate plan. We just gave you a couple examples right now. Most people think that an estate plan is only for people that have millions of dollars. Guys, if you have $5,000 or you have millions of dollars, your estate is everything that you own. Make sure you have it set up that your estate, what's left over, is going effectively and efficiently to the people you want it to go to. You see on here beneficiaries. Again, are your beneficiaries set up? Can you avoid probate? Can you avoid taxes? There's many assets that you have that if you sell those assets while you're alive, there are huge capital gains on them. If I hold on to that asset until after I die and it goes to my heirs, there's no capital gains on that. Let me just give you an example. We use round numbers. I buy a house for $100,000. It's now appreciated to $1 million. I sell that house today, I've got $900,000 of capital gains tax that I have to pay. Capital gains tax on that $900,000. If I don't sell that house and hold on to it until I die and it passes on to my heirs' cost basis has now been stepped up to $1 million. They can turn around and sell that house tomorrow and pay zero gains tax on it. Estate planning has a lot to do with taxes. Where is it best for the taxes? When is it best? And who is it best for the taxes to be paid? I talked about the no, one size does not fit at all. The last thing I want anyone to do right tonight is go out and say, this is what Cheryl said. I just listened to this presentation. This is what Cheryl says, and I'm going to go out and do this. Please, please get some professional advice. If that is with our foundation, that's great. If it's with someone else that you're working with, that's great as well. But try when you are working with someone to that they're taking a holistic approach that can help you. 15-year mortgages versus 30-year mortgages. Many people feel, you know what, interest rates are really low right now. I'm just going to take a 15-year mortgage because first of all, I'm going to save interest in paying it off in 15 years rather than 30 years, and my interest rate is really low. Think about that. Is that where you want to be 7 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, when your life is going to be completely different? Always know you can take a 30-year mortgage and turn it into a 15-year mortgage. But to turn a 15-year mortgage into a 30-year mortgage, you have to refinance it. It may be a higher interest rate, and you may not qualify. So you have to look at the here and now, how you're being affected now, and what the ramifications, good and bad, are down the road. Not a lot more on there. There's this kind of siloed advice, if you will. What to do now? The bottom line is, what you can do right now is act. Like I said earlier, and I'm not going to go into this anymore, but if you don't have any professionals to talk to, reach out to our foundation. We'll help you. We'll point you in the right direction. That may be pointing you back to your attorney. That may be pointing you to wherever. But ask for help from us. We're more than welcome to help. So what I am going to do is I am now going to stop this recording. And if you have questions, why don't you put them in those chat boxes, and I will answer them to the best of my knowledge.